December 3rd, 2017. A private dinner in the river town of Wuzhen, China. A photograph leaks. Around one table sits nearly every man who runs the Chinese internet. The founders of JD, Meituan, Didi, Xiaomi, billionaire after billionaire. At the center sits Pony Ma, the founder of Tencent. One man is missing. Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba. The most famous businessman in China was not invited. Reporters asked him about it. His answer, if Alibaba held a dinner party, it would be the best in the world. This was not a feud about dinners. These two men had split the Chinese internet into two nations. 1 billion people lived inside their apps, and the borders were real. Paste a Taobao link into WeChat and it would not open. Try to pay with Alipay inside Tencent's world, and you could not. Two empires, one country, no trade. This is how that war was fought and who finally ended it, because it was not either of them. The two men could not be less alike. Pony Ma trained as an engineer and behaves like one. He rarely gives interviews. Colleagues describe him editing product details line by line, late at night, by message. Jack Ma failed his university entrance exam twice. He taught English. He performs on stage in leather jackets and feather boas. He talks. Pony builds. Their companies inherited those personalities. Tencent began with QQ, a desktop chat tool. Its real weapon arrived in 2011. A small internal team under an engineer named Zhang Xiaolong built WeChat. The app swallowed Chinese life. Payments, taxis, doctors, government paperwork. One app, over 1 billion users. Alibaba began with commerce. Taobao became the place China shopped. Alipay became the way China paid. On a single Singles Day, Alibaba processed more sales than America's entire Black Friday weekend. By the mid-2000s, each empire held something like 500 million people's waking hours. Then they stopped competing and started colonizing. Neither fought the other directly. They bought armies instead. Tencent put money into JD, Alibaba's biggest retail rival, then into Meituan for food delivery, Didi for ride-hailing, and later Pinduoduo. Alibaba swallowed Eli.me, took control of Weibo's commerce, and built its own delivery force. Hundreds of companies each. Nearly every startup in China eventually faced the question, whose side are you on? Because by 2013, picking neither had stopped being an option. In 2013, the border closed. Alibaba blocked WeChat from accessing Taobao. Tencent blocked Taobao links inside WeChat. Each said the other started it. Here is what that meant in practice. A friend messages you a product link on WeChat. You tap it, you get an error page or a warning that the link is unsafe. The product was not unsafe. It was from the wrong empire. 1 billion people adapted because people always adapt. Sellers invented a smuggling system called the Tao password. It worked like this. Instead of a link, Taobao generated a string of nonsense characters. You copied the whole message inside WeChat. Then you opened the Taobao app, which read your clipboard and found the code. Product appeared. Think about what you just heard. Chinese consumers were copying coded strings between apps, like couriers crossing a checkpoint every day. For years, because two companies refused to exchange hyperlinks, the internet was invented to link things. In China, the link itself had become contested territory. For merchants, the war was more expensive than inconvenient. Alibaba enforced a policy with a famous name, Xuan Yi. Choose one of two. Sell on our platform or sell on our rivals. Not both. Merchants who joined JD promotions found their Taobao traffic strangled. Brands were told to close their stores on rival sites or watch their search rankings die. JD sued over it in 2017. The case crawled through the courts for 6 years. In December 2023, a court ordered Alibaba to pay JD 1 billion yuan. By then, the practice had already been outlawed. We will get to why. First, the payments war, because that is where Jack Ma got ambushed. Chinese New Year has one universal ritual. Elders hand children red envelopes of cash. In January 2014, WeChat digitized it. The feature let you send a red envelope to a group chat. The money split randomly among whoever grabbed first. Grandma's gift became a game. It detonated. Over the holiday, millions of people linked their bank cards to WeChat just to play. Tencent got years of payment signups in a weekend. That was the point. The envelopes were a Trojan horse for WeChat Pay. Alipay had spent a decade building China's dominant payment system. Jack Ma understood immediately what had happened. He called it a Pearl Harbor attack on Alibaba. He was not joking. His counterattack had actually started months earlier. And it tells you who was losing. In October 2013, Jack Ma sent an internal letter. Tencent's mascot is a penguin. The penguin, he wrote, must be driven back to the South Pole. Alibaba would march it there with its own messaging app, Laiwang. Then he made it mandatory. Every Alibaba employee had to recruit 100 outside users for Laiwang. Falling short meant losing your red envelope, the year-end bonus. Picture that. Tens of thousands of engineers and salespeople begging relatives to install a chat app nobody wanted. Laiwang died anyway. You cannot conscript a social network. The payments war settled into a duopoly instead. By 2020, Alipay held a little over half the market. WeChat Pay held most of the rest. Between them, roughly 90% of mobile payments in China. Cash disappeared from Chinese cities. Two private companies now sat between 1 billion people and every transaction they made. Someone else had been watching that number grow. On October 24, 2020, Jack Ma gave a speech in Shanghai. His audience included China's most senior financial regulators. Ma told them Chinese banks ran on a pawnshop mentality. He said the regulators were using yesterday's rules to police tomorrow. He was 11 days from the largest stock listing in world history. Ant Group, Alibaba's finance arm, was set to raise $34 billion. The listing never happened. Regulators suspended it with 2 days to spare. Jack Ma vanished from public view. The pawnshop line made headlines. The real problem was arithmetic. Ant had become a lending machine. It issued loans to 500 million people through Alipay. But Ant kept only around 2% of the risk on its own books. The other 98% sat with China's banks. Ant took the fees. The state held the danger. Beijing had found its phrase for all of it. The disorderly expansion of capital. What followed was 2 years of demolition. April 2021, Alibaba was fined 18.2 billion yuan, about $2.8 billion. The largest antitrust fine in Chinese history. The stated offense, choose one of two, the merchant exclusivity system. Meituan was fined next for the same practice. Tencent was ordered to give up exclusive music rights it had used to strangle rivals. Then, in September 2021, the government reached the walls themselves. The industry ministry ordered the platforms to stop blocking each other's links. Interconnection was now a legal requirement. The market understood what it was watching. At the bottom, Tencent had lost $623 billion of value from its peak. One newswire called it the biggest stock wipeout on Earth. The war was over. Nobody at the table had won it. But watch how slowly the losers obeyed. The order to tear down the walls came in September 2021. Watch how long the demolition took. That same month, WeChat made its first concession. External links would now open in private chats, one-to-one messages only. Group chats stayed walled. The companies called this compliance. It was a toll gate opening one lane. The real test was payments. Could you finally buy something on Taobao with WeChat Pay? You could not. Not that year. Not the next year. Not the year after that. Taobao accepted WeChat Pay on September 27, 2024, 3 years and 10 days after the government order. The other direction moved just as grudgingly. JD opened to Alipay. Taobao links became shareable inside WeChat, each step announced like a diplomatic breakthrough between hostile states, which is what it was. But while the two empires dismantled their walls, something embarrassing happened. A third company won the war. Pinduoduo launched in 2015, selling cheap goods through group buying games. Both giants dismissed it as a discount app for villagers. Tencent even funded it as one more spear aimed at Alibaba. Pinduoduo never built walls. It grew inside WeChat, then outgrew it. It went abroad as Temu while the giants were busy with regulators at home. On November 30th, 2023, PDD passed Alibaba in market value. Read that carefully. PDD became China's most valuable e-commerce company, with roughly 1/5 of Alibaba's revenue. The decade-long war between two empires ended with a third empire standing on top of both. And the two Ma's? One question remained for each of them. What was left? So was Beijing right to do it? Make the honest case. The walls were a real harm. Merchants were extorted into exclusivity. Consumers smuggled shopping links past corporate checkpoints for 8 years, and China actually fixed it. Compare the West. American regulators have sued Google and Apple for years. Users have felt almost nothing change. Europe wrote the Digital Markets Act and is still arguing about browser screens. China ordered interoperability in 2021 and eventually got it. Now, the other side of the ledger, the crackdown burned more than $1 trillion of value across Chinese tech. Venture funding for new Chinese startups collapsed and has never fully recovered. Founders learned the real lesson: grow quietly or be grown into a target. Jack Ma spent years abroad, sighted in Tokyo and Spain, silent. He resurfaced in February 2025, seated in the front row as Xi Jinping addressed China's entrepreneurs. State cameras made sure everyone saw him applauding. The message of that image was not reconciliation, it was ownership, and the walls themselves? Here is your ending. In 2026, the battleground moved to artificial intelligence. AI agents that shop and pay on your behalf need access to platforms. Reports out of China describe WeChat blocking ByteDance's new AI agent within 3 days of launch. Blocked. Inside WeChat, the same move, a new decade. The government tore down the walls between apps. Nobody tore down the reason the walls existed. Look at the dinner photo one more time. December 2017. Pony Ma at the center of the table. Jack Ma missing, insisting his party would have been better. Within 4 years, one of them had lost $600 billion of company value. The other had lost his IPO, his freedom to speak, and years of his public life. The empires they built still stand. They finally exchange links and payments the way hostile states exchange prisoners, under supervision and without warmth, but the war was never really about links. The walls existed because whoever owns the customer owns everything downstream. Every payment, every price, every merchant's fate. Both men understood that. It is why neither would open a single gate until the state forced them. And it is why the gates are already closing again, around AI agents this time. China's internet spent a decade as 2 nations. It is now 1 nation with 2 very obedient provinces. The border guards changed uniforms. The next dinner photo that matters will not have either Ma in it. Whoever is at the center of that table, the walls will follow them. This video covers the war between Alibaba and Tencent. Watch the deeper story of what happened to the man at the center of it, the speech that triggered his disappearance, the 87 days nobody could find him, and what his return in 2025 actually meant. Watch Jack Ma gave one speech, then he disappeared.